sit back and maintain my composure. But when I walk in the room, I'm used to my mood taking over. But here it comes again. Emotions coming down like the rain. And I ain't gonna change something that I can't contain. I don't hold back. And you know that I can be a cry, baby. I wear it on my sleeve. And baby, that's just me. I need to cry, baby. And you know that I don't hold back.
Waterworks, I know my worth. Ducking love, avoid getting my feelings hurt. No cap, I be all up in my bag. Poker face, but even queens get sad. I got played before, showing my hand, so I fall back. I'm like Autumn. Don't call me unstable, I beg your pardon. Tough as nails, but hell, I'm being honest. On the outside, I'm trying to be the toughest, but way down, I'm more like David Ruffin. Nights like this, I wish the raindrops stopped coming down for my eyes, but I really got a lot to let go of. I let it all pour out. Precipitate, I should be straight by now. I admit I can't keep it all in, and you can't keep a real woman down. You know that I'm a
baby. I wear it on my sleeve. And baby, that's just me. I need to cry, baby. And you know that I don't hold back.
Supposed to be, oh, and now I'm fully grown. This must be LA. Tired and lonely, with no real place to stay. Is this the future? And where I'm gonna be? Last night in Houston, when I had this crazy dream, I'm waking up this moment is gone, and it's been so long since we last embraced. Do you remember me? Do you feel it still? When the picture of me in your mind's eye loses its color, when it's faded, I wonder now. Oh, I wonder now. Do you know me well? Will you carry me deep inside? Time will tell. If you flow into the sea, far and wide a river be. Oh, only time will tell. Where the shine, 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 shine in your eyes. Shine, 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 shine in your mind. Shine, 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 shine in your eyes. Shine, 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 shine in your mind. You know you made your mark. You're a longing I've been harboring in my heart, and I need to know if you remember me. Even when it's hard, and my star shining for you in the dark. If I faded, I wonder now. Oh, I wonder now. Do you know me well? Will you carry me deep inside? Time will tell. If you find me in the night, infinitely in this light, oh, only time will tell. Where the shine, 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 shine in your eyes. Shine, 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 shine in your mind. Shine, 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 shine in your eyes. Shine, 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 shine in your mind.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 11th edition of the World Manufacturing Forum. New business model for the manufacturing of the future. This is what we're going to discuss in this very special 2 days event. And one of the reasons why this edition is so special is the location. This is the first time that WMF is hosted inside an industrial plant. This is the headquarters of Samedoit's FAR. And as you know, if you had a walk across the museum, this is exactly the area where the company was born. And in 1927, the Cassani brothers invented the first tractor equipped with a diesel engine, and then a history of innovation. So this is an ideal place for our discussion today and tomorrow. And for this, I leave immediately the floor for his welcome to the owner of this plant and the CEO of Samedoit's FAR, Ludovico Bussolati. Please, Bussolati.
So first of all, I would like to thank you everybody for being here, and to more be precise, I'm just the CEO, not the owner.
Yeah, the CEO, I'm sorry.
Our company is a family company and was founded in 1927. And at the beginning, at the start of the tour in our museum, you can see the Cassani tractor. That was the beginning of our history, and was a big innovation in our sector. As a matter of fact, it was the first diesel engine tractor, and today 100% of the tractor working on the fields are powered by a diesel engine. So our history was always based on two fundamental pillars. One was innovation, and the second one was manufacturing, so good practice in manufacturing. And in 1952, there was another big innovation. That was the first tractor with four-wheel drive. That was really a big change. And today, 95% of the tractor are diesel engine and four-wheel drive. So innovation and manufacturing are principles that are driving our daily management still today. And I really believe that for us to have the opportunity to host this World Manufacturing Forum, it's also a way to let you visit our company, but it's also clear a full alignment with the spirit of your foundation, that is to spread the industrial culture worldwide. We strongly believe that innovation and manufacturing are the base for developing a company, and for this reason it's really a pleasure, and we are also a little bit proud to host this important 2 days job and work in our location. So thank you very much again, and I wish you all good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Lodovico Bussolati, CEO of Summit Deutz FAR. And since the very beginning of the WMF, the Regione Lombardia played a major role in promoting and being partner to the event. So we are delighted and honored to have today the President of Regione Lombardia, Attilio Fontana. Please, President.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me to this event. It is a pleasure for me to be here. Due to his history, its number and its economic power, Lombardy is not ordinary region, nor a normal administrative body. Lombardy must take on the role of helping to build the future, aware of challenges ahead, the fiercely tackling them. This is our approach to governance as we champion the most important economy in Italy and one of the most important in Europe. In order to successfully conduct businesses and create jobs and pursue the digital transition and the green revolution, we are now developing the concept of the production chain. We have implemented a strategy aimed to strengthening the bonds between the manufacturing, academic and scientific worlds and training institutes in order to forge true ecosystems. Key to this is medium to long-term planning, so we are diversifying our strategy. Rather than focusing an individual company and specific factor, we must exploit the potential we have, combining our many fields of excellence. In particular, the training of the new enablers in the ecological and digital transition will be promoted. I am very happy to be here, and I believe so much to our entrepreneurs. They are making big workers in our region, and we will try to go on to this collaboration between public and private to improve our region and to make sure that we can go on to be the principal motor of our nation. Thank you so much and good work.
Thank you, President Attilio Fontana. Thank you so much for being here for the opening of the World Manufacturing Forum. But now the floor goes to the President of the World Manufacturing Foundation, Diego Andres.
Good afternoon, everybody. Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues and friends. It's my privilege to really welcome you to this 2023 World Manufacturing Forum. It actually feels so good being back together. Let me start with a warm thank to the World Manufacturing Foundation. Let me start with the funding partners, the reason we exist, Confindustria Lombardia and Politecnico of Milano. Our main partner, Lombardy region, and thanks Presidente Fontana being here with us today. The European Commission, UNIDO, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, institution, the event sponsors, and all of you. And a special thanks to Mr. Ludovico Bussolati for their hospitality here in this extraordinary example of the transformation our industry is actually living and going through, and which seamlessly bring us into the theme of today, the new business model for the future of manufacturing. The World Manufacturing Foundation is an open, independent platform connecting stakeholders around the globe to discuss the main trends affecting the manufacturing sectors, aiming to improve manufacturing's central role as a dynamic and positive driver of economic equity and sustainable development, exchanging knowledge and collaborating on common and pressing issues. It also works to steer the development of regional and national industrial agenda and develop common grounds for a future-proof industry. Lastly, it serves as a catalyst for innovation, fostering solutions to address significant global challenges like the one we're used now to live in and spread impactful initiatives. The foundation is at the forefront. Today, the hyper-acceleration of technology we live in and its adoption, and in particular refer these days really to AI, has three direct consequences for manufacturing business. It is not just creating opportunity to transform every company offering, which is what we'll be discussing today and tomorrow, but at the speed it's actually traveling, it can be a threat for those companies and people who will not be seriously considerate and start experimenting today. Second, it is creating incredible opportunity to radically improve the way we do manufacture our products. Third, it can really augment ourselves in a way most of us really would have never imagined just 1 year ago, even 6 months ago. What we individually do and what the way we and our companies connect and collaborate. For this reason, new business model for the future manufacturing has been chosen as the main topic of this year's forum. The global essence of the foundation is realized not only through this event, the World Manufacturing Forum 2023, in its 11th edition, that brings together globally policy experts, industry leaders from large multinational to SMEs, and academic leaders to discuss policy, economic, social, and technical challenges that influence global manufacturing, but also by the contribution of an extraordinary panel of experts for the drafting of the report led by the scientific vice chairman of the WMF, David Romero, which we are all waiting for today, but also in the activation of strong international partnership as the one with the Manufacturing Technology Deployment Group from North America, where Dean Bartos is present today, and I really thank him for being here with us today. The Indaba Manufacturing from the Africa region, the Intelligent Manufacturing Kuala Lumpur from the Asia Pacific region, and the Abu Dhabi Department of Economic Development from the Middle East, which are fundamentals to help us scale the impact of the foundation. I would like lastly to highlight two very specific, very valuable initiatives of the foundation. First, the Young Manufacturing Leaders Network, an invaluable platform that brings together passionate young minds on manufacturing. This network is not just about fostering the next generation of industry leaders, it is about infusing fresh perspectives and innovative approaches into our industry. And I really encourage you to engage with and support the YML as they represent a very key ingredient for the future of our industry. Tomorrow, starting at 2:30 p.m., the Young Manufacturing Summit will actually kick off. Also, please help us and ourselves raise the quality of how we communicate the extraordinary place industry is, and more will be tomorrow, to make STEM studies and industry a first choice for our new generation. I'm also very glad to address the significant work of the Women in Manufacturing initiatives of the WMF led by Christine Oyon, Director of Technology, Innovation and Sustainability at SFRI, which explores the profound impact that women have on industrial competitiveness. This research is not just a testament to gender equality as a human right, but a clear indicator, and we'll see that more tomorrow, of how crucial gender diversity is for economic resilience and competitiveness. We really all look forward to dive into this tomorrow with her during her presentation with the WMF, especially for women in manufacturing, impact of women in industrial competitiveness. As we embark on this discussion, I urge each of you to engage actively, share your insight, and help us scale this community. The path toward a competitive, pioneering, and sustainable manufacturing, it is actually a collective journey that requires our shared commitment and action. So please, let's make this forum a milestone in such ongoing journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Diego Andres, for anticipating some of the major topics of the World Manufacturing Forum that was born for an initiative, an engagement of Confindustria Lombardia. Francesco Buzzella is president of Confindustria Lombardia. Please.
Good morning. Good morning to the World Manufacturing Foundation partners, institutions, colleagues, and to all the attendees here in this special location. It is truly an honor to stand here today as a representative of Lombardy's industrial sector. Our region, known for its rich history and innovative spirit, is a globally known hub for manufacturing excellence. Today, we will explore new business models for the manufacturing sector, and it is both exciting and inspiring to be part of this global conversation. In the fast-evolving landscape of industry, Lombardy has continuously embraced change, leveraging innovation to stay at the forefront of the global market. We clearly understand that the future of manufacturing lies not just in producing goods, but in redefining the way we approach business. The result of this approach is clearly reflected in our regional exports data. The share of turnover achieved abroad in 2022 was an average equal to 44.2%, up compared to the 43.5% in 2021, and it is estimated that it may grow further in 2023, reaching 45.3% of export. The average number of countries served by a company is 23, of which approximately half are located outside the European Union. If we look at the decisions taken by the Lombardy manufacturing industry towards foreign supplier, a shift from intention to action emerges over the last few years. It is indeed confirmed that approximately 30% of Lombardy companies have or are about to change their supply chains. So I would like to share some highlights into the dynamic initiatives and perspectives that define Lombardy's approach to new models in manufacturing. First of all, collaboration is the pillar of our success. Lombardy has fostered strong partnership between institutions, industry representatives, universities, innovation incubators. The collaborative ecosystem facilitates the exchange of ideas, the pooling of resources, and the development of cutting-edge technologies. By working together, we have been able to navigate challenges and seize opportunities also outside our regional and national boundaries. Moreover, Lombardy recognizes the paramount importance of sustainability in modern manufacturing. We are committed to implementing eco-friendly practices and embracing circular economy principles. What the Lombardy production system cannot accept, however, are decisions guided by ideology. In the area of digitalization, we have invested heavily in smart manufacturing technologies, data analytics, and artificial intelligence to enhance efficiency, reduce costs, and elevate the overall quality of our products. Embracing the digital revolution has allowed us to stay competitive and resilient in an area defined by rapid technological changes. As we collectively explore new business models, it is crucial to emphasize the importance of fostering talent and skills development. Lombardy places a strong emphasis on education and training programs that equip our workforce with the skills needed for the jobs of the future. By investing in human capital, we ensure a sustainable and prosperous future for our industry. The future of manufacturing industry is expected to be shaped by several emerging business models. Here are some key trends and models that are likely to play a significant role. Servitization, digital platforms and ecosystems, subscription-based models, customization and personalization, circular economy, advanced analytics and predictive maintenance, collaborative robotics and artificial intelligence integration, blockchain for supply chain transparency, energy efficient and sustainable practices, augmented reality for training and maintenance. These models represent a shift towards a more interconnected, sustainable, and technologically advanced future of the manufacturing industry. In conclusion, the Lombardy region remains committed to pioneering new business models for the manufacturing industry. By embracing collaboration, sustainability, digitalization, and talent development, we are not only adapting to change, but actively shaping the future of industry. Let's collectively propel the manufacturing sector into a new era of innovation and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you, Presidente Buzzella, Confindustria Lombardia. We have to wrap up our introductory remarks, so please welcome Professor Marco Taisch, Scientific Director at the World Manufacturing Forum.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm talking on behalf of the World Manufacturing Foundation to explain you the program and why we set up this program, but also let me share and report to you the welcome from the Rector of Politecnico di Milano, who is one of the two members of the World Manufacturing Foundation. Why we put this program together with this content, with these panels, what is our purpose, and how this year the topic has been chosen as a sequence of the topics from the previous years. In the previous years, we focused more on how to structure manufacturing, how companies should react internally to what was happening, how to use artificial intelligence, how to look for talents and skills, how to redesign their supply chain. This year we decided, considering the challenges that the companies are facing outside, there are geopolitical issues becoming much more important. There are topics like sustainability, which is becoming more and more important. All of this is changing the competitive arena in which companies are working. And for this reason, one of the answers is not just to look inside the company, not just to optimize the company and the supply chain, but also to look outside the company. How to create new business model, what kind of new business models is the answer that companies should look for in order to be more and more competitive. For this reason, we put all this panel together. As you can see, this is the program for this afternoon. there will be a special address, and there will be the presentation of the World Manufacturing Report and a keynote. All these three first speeches will set the scene for the discussion that we are going to have today. The report will be, the presentation of the report will be made by our Vice Scientific Chairman, David Romero, who have coordinated all the work, and let me thank David and all the team who has been working for the report for this year. Then panel 1, 2, and 3, as you can see, are working first on how to redesign the foundation of the value chain, and what is the relationship between the value chains and the new operating model, the new business model. The second is more focused on what is going to be the role of technologies, not only digital technologies, but technology in general, and therefore how to match innovation from one side with the creation of the new business model from the other side. And third is the role of talent, the role of people. You cannot design the future of your company without having talents. But talents means young people. These young people, they are not just customer, consumer, they are worker. And what is happening is that they are bringing their values, their willingness, their view of the future in the company itself. And therefore, they are not just a customer who wants sustainability, but they are a customer who wants to have and work in a sustainable environment. And tomorrow morning, we will start with the Women in Manufacturing report, as was already announced, and then we will go through the rest of the program. How to redesign value chains which are net zero impact, how to redesign value chains which are somehow sustainable from the perspective. And then in the last two panels, we will be focusing more on what type of business models we need to redesign. The first one is more central with business to consumer. You see that customer-centric manufacturing is at the core of this session, while the last one is more focused on business to business environment and how to create new business model in this perspective. And then, of course, we will disclose to you what is going to be the topic of next year. And let me just wish all the speakers a great event. Let me just wish to all the audience a great event. And I think it's very important not only to listen to the speaker, but also to exchange idea with you. It's an open platform, and open platform means that everybody is invited to contribute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Marco Taisch. So it's time to start discussing new business model, a generation of new business model for the manufacturing of the future. So we start in this new format at the World Manufacturing Forum with a special address. And the special address comes this year by Ian Cronin, who's Center Community Curator at the Center for Advanced Manufacturing and Supply Chain at the World Economic Forum, that I welcome on the stage. Please.
All right, thank you, everybody. I think between the agenda that Marco just presented and what we already heard, it's going to be tough to follow and add too much, but I'll do my best. I think the rest of the speakers throughout the day are going to touch a lot on some specific elements of business models. So what I really wanted to focus on today and get into was really some of the themes that I think are going to shape these business models. In particular, we're going to look at things that they're innovative, resilient, and sustainable, and having those core themes shaping sort of where we're headed. If you're making anything, if you're a manufacturer in the room today, those three words right there are going to be fundamental to your organization's success over the next 20 years. They need to become part of your organizational DNA. And I think what we can do is dive a little bit further into what we're seeing at the World Economic Forum on a global level and what those mean. So the World Economic Forum, we run a number of initiatives. One of our core initiatives is called the Global Lighthouse Network. So this was a piece of work we started about 5 years ago with McKinsey & Company. We had done some research and found that when most companies try to implement new technologies into their operations, they get stuck in that pilot phase. They never actually see an ROI. They never get scale. So we said, well, if 25 to 30% manage to get ROI, what if we can identify the 1% who are the very best at this? And what you see on the screen right now is a snapshot of the 132 organizations who've had sites recognized as lighthouse factories. And I think one thing I want to highlight from these that I think is a common thread across all of them is that when they look at technology adoption, it's not about using some shiny new capability to do things in the same way that we've already done. It's about trying to reimagine your operations and change fundamentally the actions and what's possible and how we think about our overall operations. If we go then to specifically what we're learning from this network, we have more than 650 use cases, and you can see some of the things of where these applications tend to come from. But again, I think the important thing when we think about the Global Lighthouse Network, and Marco just mentioned sort of talking with one another in dialogue, that's critical to the success so far, is that every single lighthouse who gets recognized, they get an award, which is great. Everybody likes to be recognized and get a trophy, but they agree to go on a learning journey and to share what they've done and how they've done it. We go into these factories every month to talk with the people who drove those digital transformations to really understand what were their challenges, what were their bottlenecks, and how did they overcome them, and how we can learn from one another so we're not constantly reinventing the wheel when it comes to these elements. If I go to the second word in the interest of time here on resilient, and by the way, I recognize that all three of these words are not necessarily transformative, they're not shocking. The second word I've probably beaten to death along with all of you for the last 4 years. But again, when it comes to what's coming and sort of where we're thinking about it, and actually some of these global megatrends that you see at the top have already been mentioned today, but we're seeing when it comes to resilience, we know that we have geopolitical tensions. It doesn't take much more than opening today's newspaper to see the impacts of that on all of our operations. We have climate change, and we have new technologies themselves that are really shaping what we're working on, how we're working, the way we're trying to accomplish things, and also what we need to do about it. I think, from the World Economic Forum perspective, we're often known for sort of that 30,000-foot level of what's happening with multinationals. But I think when we look at megatrends, the thing that's really interesting that we're seeing is they unfold differently on the ground. When you actually get into communities, we have a group, a network of global advanced manufacturing hubs. There's one here right in Lombardia. We work with AFL very closely, have the pleasure of working with your communities on this, but really to try to understand what does collaboration look like and how can we look at something like climate change and how it's going to impact your group and your companies and the different industries on the ground and help adapt to those. And then if we go one level deeper beyond the community, what does that mean for companies' priorities? So we've done a piece of work looking at how companies are thinking about the priorities in their organizations differently. You'll see the first three things on the page here are the same three keywords that I mentioned. Two others on workforce. I'll dive a little bit more into that in a minute. But then also on the customer. And what's the role of the customer in your future business models? I think it's no surprise that we see customization as a key element that customers want. But the tricky part, and I think this is, again, something that as we plan for the future, how do we actually operate, is what does customization at scale look like? How do we think about that? And how do we actually make that something that we can execute as an organization? If I move on to the third word, sustainable. It was great to hear it actually come up already a couple times. I think Francesco mentioned it. We had Diego mentioning it. And sustainability, there's two core elements I want to talk about that we're seeing. One is on net zero supply chains. So this is last January, we published this framework saying, look, no matter where you're at on your journey of thinking about net zero, whether you've made a commitment, you're thinking about it, your CEO already has done it, and I have no idea what to do, there's 10 core pillars you need to execute across. But when it comes to actually figuring out what to do, it's easy to say you need to address your scope 3 emissions. And the question for us that we're constantly looking at is how. And example on the scope 3 is going a layer deeper to say, okay, who's actually doing this? Who has shown improvement on addressing their scope 3 emissions? When we started looking at this, my favorite response when going to events was, well, you have to collaborate with your supply chain partners. Thank you, that's very helpful. What does that mean? How do I do that? And so what we're doing right now is looking at examples of companies, and please, if you have them, please come to me, of use cases where people have actually moved the dial on this. And then looking at what are those common threads that we can say, here's something that's replicable, that we can actually share with other organizations to see what I can do in these spaces. Beyond net zero and what we can do here, Circularity. Now, if we think about sort of true transformative business model change, this is one of it. But as you can see probably by what is already an overly complicated slide behind me, it's not easy. It requires an entire system change of what we're trying to do, from the business model to how companies think to how you interact with your supply chain partners in an entirely different way. And I think what is missing here again is no one wants to be the first mover on something like this. And in an example like circularity, you can't be a first mover on your own. You can't even say, I'm going to be a front runner, because it requires an entire ecosystem to work together. So what we're trying to do again in these spaces is say, can we get a proof of concept? You know, circularity is a word talked about for 20 years with no scaled impact, but trying to dive into specific industries, whether it's in the electronic sector, EV batteries, the fashion sector, to say, let's look at the minimum number of cooks in the kitchen we need to demonstrate that this can work. Because if you get that, if you get the spark and you can show that it's really critical and that it actually provides you a sustainable return, where you can continue to capture value, then it's potential to really change the game. So it's something we're really looking at very closely on the sustainability front. Now, I know I started saying that there were 3 core themes that I wanted to talk about, but in reality, it's probably 3 plus 1. And the fourth term is around inclusivity. Again, a term that, like business models, can mean a lot of different things, whether we're talking about inclusivity from the global south to the global north, or inclusivity from your factory floor to your corporate offices. All of them are going to be critical to your future business models. We have the pleasure of working very closely with the University of Cambridge, their Institute for Manufacturing, and there's a number of people from the Institute in the room today, on a piece of work around workforce and what does it mean to actually engage workers. And one thing we found is when companies are thinking about digital transformation, they're much more effective and efficient in those processes when they engage their frontline workers. But what does it mean to do that? How do you have conversations with folks and convince that we need to change the way we do things inherently and effectively and at scale, but also make them a part of that conversation? And so we've been around the world on factory floors interviewing operators to try to help bridge that gap. But it's something that we need to continuously learn, because again, like the network of hubs and working here in Lombardia, the way you do that in the north of Italy is going to be different than the way you do it in Brazil, and is going to be different than the way you do it in India. And so trying to have these conversations and understanding the complexity of a global system, how you do these things, is going to be really critical to the future of how we actually drive some of these elements. So as we think about the big 4 themes on innovation, resilience, sustainability, and inclusivity, maybe there's just one last thing to sort of tie it all together that would encourage you all to think about when it comes to, you know, it's not a visionary concept, but a vision for how you think about the future of your operating and business models, and that's to act with intent and urgency. I think on the intent side of it, it needs to become part of your organizational's identity. If you can get these 4 pieces to become part of who you actually are, it's not going to be sort of a lip service to we're going to be sustainable, but it's actually going to change the way you operate from the standards you set as a company to every meeting your company has. And then urgency, because at the end of the day, these are the drivers of your ability to capture value in the future. And so every moment that you waste or aren't able to sort of move in that direction, it means that one of your competitors can potentially be capturing that market share, and you're giving it away. So that was quick. I think you're going to have a lot more details, but I'd love to talk more with all of you. And I thank you for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ian Cronin, for giving your vision and which we're doing at the World Economic Forum. But it's time to move to one of the most awaited moments at the World Manufacturing Forum, which is the presentation of the yearly report and its decalogue of recommendation. And this year, as Marco Taish anticipated, the presentation will be by David Romero, who is Scientific Vice Chairman of the World Manufacturing Forum. Please, David.
Thank you very much. Good. So welcome, everyone. The time has come to share with you the work of a great editorial team has been done over the last months, and to share with you what it's going to take the manufacturing sector to develop these new business models for the manufacturing of the future. But let me start by asking you, and the whole point of this event is to really provoke you to reflect and really accept the challenge of innovating your business models, why manufacturing business models matter. And of course, there can be many answers, but I think that the toughest one, and that I would like to somehow highlight, it's really because we need to make manufacturing a great industry to work for the future generations. The capacity of an organization to innovate really relies in their people. And even though we have, like, of course, competitive advantage and adaptation to technological change and so many things, people are really at the heart of the capabilities of a company to innovate. So this is why it matters, because we want to make, again, manufacturing a great place to work with the best people possible that are actually going to help us to innovate all these new aspects of how we interact with people, with our customers, how we create new income sources, and how we achieve our sustainability goals. Another question to reflect is how does manufacturing business model innovation is going to impact the sector. And I think that the most important one to remark here is collaborative ecosystems. We cannot do it alone, especially because the future requires more sustainable operating and business models, ways of creating and delivering and capture value, and we cannot do it alone. As Ian was saying, we really need to transform not only our businesses, but we need to transform the whole value chains to achieve this objective. And that means how we can do it in a way that it's, of course, profitable for everyone, but responds to our responsibility towards the environment and towards society. What are the challenges? Again, many, but one to highlight is the resistance to change. We need to accept the challenge. We need to go out of our comfort zone and decide to reinvent what has been perhaps nowadays sufficiently successful, but it would require a new level of triple bottom line achievement and impact to really make it sustainable in the long run for all the members of the value chain. So, of course, global competition is changing and manufacturing models should too. We're seeing more and more competition, and that means we need also to change. I think that the future of competition is not longer based on products, but it's really on the way we create those products, and again, we deliver those products and how we capture value out of it. So the future of competition, it's business model based. And there are many trends that are pushing us to rethink our operating and our business models, from the digital economy and all the capabilities that the new technologies are offering us, looking into the data economy and seeing that as a new product that we need to think how we're going to capture value out of it, and of course using it to create next generation of values, such as in the case of the mass customization economy. Customers want more personalized, if possible, if not possible, mass customized products, and they want more than a simple physical product. They want services across the whole product life cycle, and they want to guarantee that at the end of the life cycle of that product, it will be take back and the raw materials will be reused, and it will go into creating a true circular sustainable cycle. And of course, artificial intelligence, helping us to process all these data and looking into new possibilities that perhaps we haven't think about it in the future. It's a great potential. The whole point, again, here in the forum, it's to give you a vision, to hear advice from different experts, and of course, put you into action. And the question is how to use these new trends to create new types of business models. So in the report, you will see that we have created for you different archetypes. And actually, one of the things I want you to encourage, and I think that would be a great success for us to see, is actually at the back of the report, you will see that you have a blank canvas, a couple of blank canvases, right? And you will see across the report different archetypes of business models with depending what makes more sense for your business. Is it's following the digital transformation trend through digital business models, if it's really looking into the data-driven economy and using data to complement your value offerings or create new ones, or using AI to mine that data and create new insights to, again, and all these business models, I have to say, they're combined to customize, your products using better insights that you get from adopting digital technologies, processing the data with the help of AI, using it to mass customize, to personalize products, and create new value-added services for them, and close the loop of the life cycle of all your products. Being said this, here are the 10 key recommendations to successfully deploy innovative business models by the World Manufacturing Foundation. First one is to embrace a customer-centric innovation approach to foster loyalty and drive growth. And the most important thing is we must have our customers, our market, as a co-creator, as a co-innovator of the next generation value propositions that our company are going to release. And this means transforming the way we interact and how we relate with them. We need to create sustainable value propositions based on a triple bottom line. Again, no more excuses, as the framework said. We really need to guarantee that what we're building is going to give us competition through social, environmental responsibility, and make this possible in a profitable way. We need to respond to more demanding customers, which they any longer will be accepting commodity products. They really want a touch of customization, personalization in their value offerings. And this is going to help us to rethink through servitized, perhaps business models, to how we are going to extend our value propositions. We need to develop new sales channels for hybrid revenue streams as we build, yes, on one side inside the factories, the cyber-physical production systems. Outside, we need to create these omni-channels where we're going to create a seamless experience for our customers to contact us in any way to be able to experience our different value propositions. We need to foster tighter bonds by creating improving customer relationships. It's no longer any transactional relationships, but it's really working together, and especially when we look into circular business models that we need to take back, we need to recover, and we look into the complexity of reverse logistics, how, again, as we were seeing in the first recommendation, how we can really bring our customers as part of that collaborative ecosystem that is going to need the future, the sustainable future of the manufacturing sector. 6, we need to unlock the value potential by harnessing AI and data analytics to create new revenue streams. And again, yes, it's challenging, but we need to find a way to do it in a profitable way. Otherwise, as business would say, it needs to make business sense. Yes, there's a commitment, there is a responsibility towards society and the environment, but in order to be able to do it and keep doing it in the long run, we need to find new ways to create new sources of revenue streams, and here AI can help us to explore it. 7, we need to balance key resources to avoid their over and underestimation for sustainable operations. Not too much, not too little. And again, technology is going to really help us to achieve that efficient and sufficient manufacturing operations that we need. And again, I think this is where mass customization, and you will see that all the recommendations and all the different aspects when it comes to business models are interconnected. We want to develop those mass customized, personalized products because we know that those products will be sold. And we don't want to produce anything that we are not 100% sure that is going to be purchased, and that means no waste. That means that all the resources that we're putting energy, water, labor, information, raw materials into it, are really going to make the business sustainable in the long run. We need to prioritize localized manufacturing and strengthen the core competences for market agility and sustainability. We're seeing, and this was part of the report of last year, how we are redesigning the supply chains, and this localized manufacturing could help to reduce the amount of emissions related to logistics in our supply chains. We need to expand partnerships beyond today's value chains. And again, this connects to our report, and as Marco was saying, we have really thought that every year we would like to give another piece of knowledge, another piece of value for all the companies to really be able to reach to this point of this topic of this year over the last 6 years that we have been creating different reports. How we are going to reinvent our value chains and go beyond the boundaries and create new collaborative ecosystems that are really going to be able to shape the future of manufacturing as the society and the planet demands. And the last one, it's we need to overcome the investment barriers to establish trusting relationships to unleash continuous cash flow for our assets. And then again, when we have business models such as servitization, it really allows us to create a long-term relationship, a continuous cash flow coming in, and really have that economic sustainability that is required to bet more on the social and environmental responsibility that the companies have. Let me finish by thanking the editorial team, which is, of course, what the group of persons that make possible this year's report. We have made a very international group of talented people from different universities, different countries around the world. So thank you very much for your contributions. And of course, also to an advisory board that also provided insightful inputs on how was the best way to deliver this message for our audience. Lastly, let me finalize, because there's no conclusion for this topic, there's only a call for action, saying that it is really time, and was really put there, we need to accept the challenge. It is really time to reimagine and reshape the way manufacturing sector operates. And we need to ensure that sustainable growth and resilience in the long run, and that can only be achieved if we really decide and commit to reinvent our business models, not as a single company, but as a whole sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David Romero, for presenting the World Manufacturing Forum report that will be the base for the discussion, the following panels today and tomorrow. But before we move to a panel discussion, let's have a keynote speech. We're delighted to have today here in Treviglio, Gia Strai, who's the Director of Research and Head of Center for International Manufacturing at the University of Cambridge. Welcome. It's a pleasure having you today.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm really delighted to be here. It's a very auspicious day in the Sikh calendar. It's actually the birthday of our founder, Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji. So my blessings to everybody in the room. It's fantastic also to see lots of Cambridge folk in the room. So I'm going to really push on with my talk. And I was given this title of What's the State of Play of Manufacturing? Very open. So I'm going to share exactly my thoughts. Initially coming back from Davos last year, waiting for the train at Davos Station, and then this has been reinforced by several events that I've picked up over the year, including our International Manufacturing Symposium in Cambridge that we just finished a month or so ago. So the first thing is the post-pandemic factors continue to disrupt our supply chains. We've seen one disruption followed by the next, by the next. Trade wars, conflict, and so on. I'll talk more about that. The second thing which really has struck me was after 20 years of globalization going in one direction, we're now seeing a shift, a more directed shift to regional and more national manufacturing. That poses some interesting challenges for all of us. Now, governments were important, but now they've become very important because national subsidies are back, and they're back in a big way. That's a very significant change to what we've seen before. Another huge surprise for me is talent is in short supply pretty much everywhere. Seems very surprising. Very educated people, some fantastic universities around the world, but are we producing the skills that industry want? And is industry shifting so quickly that it's difficult to keep up? Clean tech will be a major driver for sustainable growth, and I'll touch more on that later. Digital, we've heard some great talks now from David and Ian, but it continues to be rolled out. We see the digital lighthouses, fantastic developments, but we see some new investments in AI, metaverse, and I'll just sort of share my thinking on that, that this is a bit of a new frontier, uncharted territory. And this leads me to manufacturing supply chains are actually going to face major transformation. And there's three areas I want to talk about in the short slot that we've got. One is around managing disruptions. One disruption followed by the next. How are organizations coping with that? Second one I'm going to touch on is digitalization. And finally, I'm going to wrap up on sustainability. Now, I remember when I was in Davos in, I think, January 2020, this was the risk chart at the time. Those of you who got very good eyesight might just spot infectious diseases was one small dot on the chart. So it's actually very difficult to predict where the next disruption was going to come from. And of course, that was followed by COVID, and then followed by a series of post-COVID disruptions. But I think any of these points can be a source of challenge for manufacturing organizations. Now, this is an IMF chart on it's an uncertainty index, and it goes all the way back to 1990. And you can see the scale of these curves. The disruptions we're facing now are unprecedented. And you'll notice I touched on the war in Ukraine right at the end. We've now got conflict in the Middle East. It is very difficult to anticipate where the next disruption is going to come from. So our manufacturing supply chains really need to be able to cope with some of these major shifts that we're facing. Now, this is a supply chain we mapped. It's one company. It's a pharmaceutical company. There were some 3,000 node-to-node network connections in one company within a supply chain. And you'll see some of the analysis we've undertaken on the right of this chart of what the potential opportunities for supply chain failure are. And they're vast. So we need supply chains that can actually ride disruptions. And at the moment, they can't. And we're finding that recent disruptions are giving us now some of the tools to handle disruptions that will come in the years ahead. Now, there's a World Economic Forum report around resilience. I just want to touch on the way I think about supply chain resilience. First of all, you might look at the supply side on the left of this chart. You might think about manufacturing, or you might look at the customer on the right-hand side of the chart. And there's a series of responses we've seen organizations make on the inbound, within their factories, on the outbound towards their customers, and end-to-end, whether it's control towers or other digital information systems. So actually the tools that have been developed over the last few years have been remarkable. And it gives us a level of supply chain responsiveness that we've never had previously. Now, conflict, something we often find difficult to think about and talk about, but we've just published a paper around handling conflict and how do you unhook from a conflict zone? And our analysis, essentially, we're looking at a number of examples of product coming into a conflict zone, product leaving a conflict zone, whether it's a finished product or a component, and sometimes a market that's internal. And what we've seen is a series of very different responses. In the short term, manufacturing companies are limited with a very continuity focus. There's not a lot they can do. Mid-term, you start to utilize other tools around more resilient supply chains and alternative supply routes, diversifying your supply base. But actually, the answer for me is the third box, which is the long-term leadership we require to have a reconfiguration of the supply chain so they are intrinsically more robust. They are intrinsically able to ride a disruption that we don't yet know its dimensions, its scope, its geography. So a different type of manufacturing supply chain. So not going to go through all of these. These are some of the mitigation strategies organizations have taken. I just wanted to mention one, demand management through data is really quite critical. We often think of supply chains of how we ramp up the supply, but actually managing demand is another key tool for us. Where we locate our factories is a very important lever. What type of production process do we adopt? How modular is it? How scalable is it? Whether that's scaling up or scaling out. Alternative sourcing strategies. Now, you'll see that one supply chain I put up, how complex it was. And there's a paradox here. Is one of the reasons we have challenges is our supply chains are too complex. But often we say we want dual sourcing. That makes them even more complicated. So there's a paradox in supplier complexity. So we need to rethink simplicity. And the others are pretty much things that we are very familiar with in terms of debottlenecking, inventory optimization, and so on. But again, industrial policy matters, both in terms of intended and unintended consequences. So we're seeing trade conflict. We actually saw responses to the pandemic cause a lot of the disruptions that we had to end up facing. Now, the second topic I wanted to talk about was around business model innovation. And it's fantastic to hear my speakers ahead of me talk about some of their findings. I just want to share something that came out in a report published together with Ian and his team at the World Economic Forum on business models. And this was some 20 plus deep dive use cases with another 20 or so other cases that informed our work. So this is industry-inspired thinking. Now, one of the reasons we need more novel ways of new business models, of course, is around this customer centricity we talked about. It's the climate change agenda, but it's also leveraging those digital technologies. So these are the three drivers that were sort of inspiring our look at new business models. But this chart, I think, captured the essence of our finding. First, there are three types of digital technology interventions that enable new business models. The first one is point solutions. I'm sometimes worried about talking about business models and not talking about the factory, about procurement, about distribution, all the things we are much more familiar with. And business model seems a little bit vague. How do I get my hands around it? Well, the first thought was these point solutions that we can apply in factories or within particular functions. And generally, they have a positive return on investment. The second stage is about building the infrastructure. And you'll see the ROI, return on investment, or impact can be negative. Not necessarily an easy thing to communicate. And only then do you get the real leverage of the new business models. So charting your way to new business models isn't a straightforward
activity. Now, what do I mean by point solutions? So I wanted to just share the same model with some real specifics. And of course, I'm not going to go through each of these. But if you can scan your eyes around, what do I mean by a point solution? These are things that we can do, and many companies are doing. But what do we mean by infrastructure investments? And these are examples we've used in a healthcare setting, for example. And it's only then that you can really talk about patient-centric, customer-centric business models or outcome-based contracting. So this is a technology layer, a series of technology stacks that need to work together before you can really deliver on the new business model narrative. That's the key thing I wanted to share in this conversation. Now, digital technologies really drive not just manufacturing, but logistics and distribution. This is a warehouse in actually a cargo distribution center. It's very different than the warehouse I used to run when I was in Unilever. Those dots on the right are the little colored dots you see on the left-hand part of the chart. Moving at 5 meters per second, I think on a few millimeters clearance, being triggered by a customer purchase. How many of our manufacturing supply chains are connected to our customers as some of these are? Now, last mile logistics and just-in-time delivery has been around with us for a long time. On the left, I picked up this poster from some time ago, you'll see. Pony Express, young, skinny, wiry fellows, not over 18, wanted $25 per week. So we used to do last mile and middle mile delivery. But now it looks very, very different indeed. Now, I'm taking that diagram again in the healthcare setting. We look at what does manufacturing need to do? What does distribution need to do? What does the wholesale market need to do? And all those blue texts are the interventions that make this possible. All the red text is the reasons for not to do it. There's many reasons why this may not work. And what we really need to do is, in this transition, understand the positives and the negatives and change our manufacturing model to not product supply, but into the outcome that the product is aiming to deliver. Now, if I take it even further into the service sector, you see examples from Airbnb, where they use data to build trust between hosts and guests. In the Uber world, we see Uber Transport moving into Uber Eats. We again seeing data that redefine the adjacency between sectors. And my question to you is, how many of us in manufacturing are leveraging data down the supply chain? I suspect very few of us. So there's a lot of opportunity and a long way to go, where we can use data, for example, in Uber, which has a 5 million forecast per minute at a city block level, being used to decide whether a cab turns up close to where the customer is. So going back to those 3 stages of manufacturing, we see these 3 stages are very, very different indeed. They need different leadership styles, they need different skills. And this paper that will be hopefully out early next year talks about these 3 types of projects. What skills do I need to drive a point solution? What skills do I need to drive an infrastructure project? And what skills do we need to really hit the business model? And the business model thinking is outside-in thinking. Point solutions is inside-out thinking. And the infrastructure folk are really critical in connecting those 2 perspectives together. So we need different metrics of measurement, different champions, and different skill sets for these different types of projects. Now, just a quick shout out on skills, we really do need to nurture digital attitudes to drive digital adoption. We may even need reverse mentoring. How many of you in the room are managing people who are smarter than you, who are more digital savvy than you? Yeah, I suspect all of us. Yeah. So how do we start to nurture digital skills at all levels in the organization? Now, you saw the diagram on the right about what a warehouse looks like these days, but this is how a manufacturing digital twin operation should be looking like. What sort of skills do I need to run a digital twin manufacturing operation? They're very different than the ones that we currently sit on. So my takeaways on digital transformation, and this comes back from our paper in 2016. It's rare that a white paper has this longevity, but we have now a whole bunch of industrial partners who are using these techniques to come away with these takeaways. Sector opportunities are very different. Digital innovations can be transformative. However, there are a number of traps if you don't get that alignment right. And there's a paper of ours coming out shortly that talks about the traps of digital interventions. Technology is a crucial enabler, yes. Societal impacts may not all be positive. Let's not just paint a rosy picture. I think we need to be understanding of that. And skills gaps outstrip technology gaps. So let's focus on those skills. But what it does is, if we embrace these digital technologies, I see us now really innovating, operating, and business models. Now, sustainability was my third area. I spent 17 years working in Unilever, making very shiny products. We advertise them really well. It's one of my favorite actresses from Bollywood, and sharing the Lux soap. But actually, our industries probably look a little bit different. So one of the responsibilities for manufacturers to address sustainability issues. Now, it's a chart I've been using for a while about the value chain and what we could be doing in the value chain to address sustainability challenges. And there's a lot we can do. But we have to stop thinking of the supply chain as a linear chain. And to keep me on time, Ian did a great job in introducing this chart. So let's move from that linear perspective to that circular perspective. And you'll see circular doesn't work if we look at sustainability on its own. It must be about resource efficiency. It must be about revenue growth. And it must support resiliency. And that bottom row is how we get there. And Ian covered that really nicely. So just to wrap up, and this is my last slide. What are my takeaways? Supply network design and demand management has been with us for a while, but we are now facing a complete reconfiguration of our manufacturing supply chains that can handle the geopolitical issues, that can handle the trade issues, but also look at other issues such as infrastructure. Business and operating model innovation through digital technologies gives us a great opportunity to not be stuck in the manufacturing domain of our organizations, but to step up and take our part at the board level in innovation and growth. Skills is absolutely important. It's not an area we look at in my center, but I think it deserves its place on the chart. And finally, just to share what's going to drive this transformation. When you go into your organizations, talk about supply security, talk about leveraging digital, and talk about our sustainability obligations and net zero. And I think you'll get a welcome audience. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Aid Singh Rai. Thank you for your fascinating presentation, very comprehensive. Again, a terrific base for our following discussion. And so we move to the first panel. So let's hear two different guests from different areas of the world. So let me introduce our guests. The first one is Dean Bartels, who's President and CEO of the Manufacturing Technology Development Group from the United States. Welcome, Dean Bartels. And together with Dr. Dominic Rormus, CTO at Labs Network Industry and a Senior Manager and Engineer at Siemens, where we work in different fields of manufacturing. Welcome both. The title is the panel as The Great Rewiring of Global Manufacturing Value Chains and the Impact on Operating Models. So, gentlemen, welcome on the stage. It's a pleasure having you. First of all, I want to advise all the audience here, we're close to 400 people in the room, that you can interact with the speakers through a very easy to connect channel, which is a very simple phone number that I want to remind you, which is the one that the gallery will show you in a minute. And you can ask with SMS and WhatsApp your question or ideas or comments to the speaker. I will ask them your question. Let me start, and this is the number, +39 335 7085 439. Just take a picture. It will be useful today and tomorrow for the interaction, for your questions during the World Manufacturing Forum. So, Dr. Dominic Rormus, first, we just heard from Jait Singh Rai about the complete reconfiguration of the supply chain. And he started describing the multiple disruption we lived just in 3 years, you know, from COVID to the first invasion of Russia in Ukraine, now the war on the Middle East, but also the tension and the trade war between the US and China. What's the impact on supply chain from your standpoint today?
Thank you very much. Please allow me to start by saying thank you very much to the World Manufacturing Forum. I'm honored to be with the forum since years, and it's just a great community and podium to exchange and to get further innovation around the world in our beloved area of manufacturing. You're right, supply chain under stress, and I want to underline that even before COVID, we had a chip crisis. Affecting quite heavily automotive, and you know it very well that the concentration of chip manufacturing in certain areas of Asia was already the first glimpse where we said we need to rethink on how our global supply chains act. And everyone who talked about supply chain and resilience this morning already is totally right. However, globalization doesn't stop now. So we will not have national or even regional supply chains. For the major producers, this will be on a global scale. And I want to underline, if you remember 2021, the evergreen problem in the Suez Channel, it was not only that ship. The queue after the ship in the Suez Channel, I think, was about 3 months to solve the problem afterwards. And all of a sudden you have shortage of supply and all the impact on the working thing. How can we handle that? And it will be the theme that I will continuously in this podium work on. It's radical collaboration. It's
radical
basically, it's really the saying from ecosystems to ecosystems. We need to convert, and that's a huge impact. It's on the cultural, in a company, it's on the culture, on how you work with your suppliers from ecosystems to ecosystems. In the past, it was like this: the big OEM set the standards, set the technologies, set the boundaries, set the quality conditions, and the entire tier 1 to tier X had to follow that. In the time coming up, and I will leverage later on and come to an end now, in times of Catena X, which is a horizontal automotive ecosystem, data ecosystem, we find out that there is a win-win-win for several, down to tier 2, 3, and 4. So not the principle, the winner takes it all, that we have very often, and that, which is behind all the presentations this morning in the back mind. Okay, in the end, one of the hyperscalers will get all the money, etc., etc. No, there's a fair share for everyone that you share data. And let me underline that with a business example. We heard a lot about regulatory impacts. I agree. digital product passports will come for batteries. We have in Europe the Data Act, the AI Act, the Cyber Act, the Cyber Resilience Act. Do you want me to continue? We have around the world carbon reporting, tax authorities in Capitol Hill working on the legislation, Brussels, Parliament of Japan is working on that. This is one element, purely regulation. You need to be compliant with regulation if you want to export to a certain market. But let's, in this WMF, focus on the business model. And let me give you this wonderful Catena example. Catena X is a data economy of OEMs, 5, 6 major global OEMs in automotive, plus their entire global supply chain. It's several governance institutes, there's an association, and then there's an operating company. It's called Cofinity X. And one example was just there was a failure in a component for a car, specifically BMW. Usually, 10,000 cars minimum are called back to the shop. Costs are minimum double-digit euro and up to 3-digit euro. In this case, only 346 cars were called back. Some were not shipped to the end customers, some were in the supply chain still. So it was a fair deal for all the suppliers. I found a mistake in my supply, in my component, and the OEM is made aware in the very first moment, and this awareness is not by telephone, PDF file, or Excel. It is in a data space, which is trusted and sovereign. We can come back to that later on, how we can make that specific. And by these concrete business examples, all of a sudden investments in a data economy, which is totally fine and controlled, in an environment like manufacturing, like process industry, like energy, healthcare, etc. All of a sudden there's a business value for everyone in, and the regulation we talk about later.
Sure,
on.
this will be crucial for the supply chain of the future. We discussed this last year, the World Manufacturing Forum. This was the main topic of last year's discussion. But Dean Bartels, in the last 12 months, many things happened. And so we were closer to the COVID shock. But in the last 12 months, what happened, and Jait Singh's right reminded this, is also that government, they jumped into the game and with huge programs of subsidies. For example, the IRA in the US, the Net Zero Industry Act here in Europe. What do you make of that? What's your sense of how supply chains will change? A new operating and business model will apply?
Yeah, well, I too, first of all, want to thank the World Manufacturing Forum for inviting me. This is a great honor to be here. What a fantastic venue and a fantastic audience. I hope the audience is going to ask us some really good questions as well. But yeah, the previous speakers, Francesca, for example, mentioned collaboration and digital platforms. Two things I wanted to focus on. So collaboration, as you talk about, is so critical. If we're all going to get better in advance, we really need that collaboration. And back more than 10 years ago, President Obama decided that collaboration was going to be a key pillar to growing manufacturing in the United States, and he set up the Manufacturing USA Network. We now have 17 different manufacturing innovation institutes, all focused on a niche technology, very similar to the Catapult system in the UK, the Fraunhofer model in Germany, but each one is a little bit different, but it's all about collaboration. So for example, the company that I manage, we run the Additive Manufacturing Institute in the United States, and we have over 250 members, all of them focused on one thing, that's advancing and maturing the technology. And that's the only way we're going to get there. All hands on deck, rising tide lifting all boats. We've got to all pull together to do this type of collaboration. But talking about the specific issue that you mentioned with supply chain, the digital platform that Francesca mentioned, that's an exciting area that we're investigating. We just finished a 3-year project where the Department of Defense, specifically the U.S. Army, decided they wanted to see how far we could take additive manufacturing in the supply chain. And to do that, there's still so much variability in additive manufacturing, whether you're talking about metal additive manufacturing or even polymer additive manufacturing. Part to part, machine to machine, tremendous amount of variability depending on the parameter settings that you use. So what we did is we developed the platform and we gave about 200 small mediums an IoT edge device that would monitor the building of each one of those 3D printed parts. We collected data on all the parameter settings, not just the settings, but also the actual performance of each of those machines for each of those parameters. When the parts got shipped to the Army, they were also able to download from a cybersecure digital platform we developed a complete data file of all the data that was collected during the printing of each of those parts. Now, what did that do? Well, that gave the customer a tremendous amount of information, but a much higher level of integrity in those parts to know that those parameter settings were maintained within a specific range. So think about Open Table. I mean, how many here use Open Table to find restaurants when they're traveling? I mean, it's a fantastic multi-sided platform. I highly recommend it. But that's what we want to get to. We want to get to a multi-sided platform where manufacturers are willing to share not all, but some of their data so that the customers know they're getting good parts because they're maintaining the key parameter settings when they're machining, or in my case, 3D printing those parts. So these multi-sided platforms that you mentioned is such a great idea that I think you're going to see proliferate through advanced manufacturing in the future.
Absolutely, that's very interesting. Now, let me get back to you because, we've been talking about Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing for more than a decade now. So my interest to understand from your standing point, where are we? And all the models that we've been described and also the incentive that governments has given to industries are working as expected or not. And again, the first question from one of the experts here, it's very global, it comes from Colombia, is asking if you can also add any example of current use case of the adoption of digital technologies that can drive the innovation in operating models.
Do you want? I take it. I just gave an example in Catena X where really data saved a double-digit amount of money within a couple of minutes that usually involves a process all the way up to authorities around the world that write to owners of vehicles that this individual vehicle somewhere in the world needs to go to a shop to get any update due to any reason because of a failure of a component in that car. I mean, this is extremely specific, and I wanted to make it really so specific and clear, and that has an impact. It's a closed loop. It has an impact on the next generation of the component. We are here in one of the most traditional tractor makers place. They learn since 100 years how to improve their products by getting feedback from their customers. It has an impact on how much supply do we need where. Is there a second, a third, or a fourth supplier for the same component? And that is very specific. So I think that can be answered like this. If you allow me, Andrea, I would like to add one detail there, or one dimension, which aligns with the question you had before and which Dean already mentioned. I'm very specific now, most of you know me, is governmental money useful or not to push this development? Shall we only do it in a private way, or shall we, as President Obama in the US and several countries in the European Union, in particular the European Commission, also put governmental money? Is governmental money threatening innovation? It is not. It is supporting that not only the big OEMs with their specialized experts and divisions, but also small, medium enterprises can participate. It is supporting that common, globally harmonized standards are developed and adopted. It is for sure not natural that an SME, let's say 30 employees, 50 machines, it's just machining any type of metal, has the knowledge and the capacity to adapt in a data space, to have a data connector in place, implemented. And now I'm speaking as Siemens, we have about 80,000 suppliers. More than 90% of those are SMEs around the world. The number 90% is quite adequate. It is for sure not natural that you can scale with an SME. Every SME is in the market because they address a specific need. This is by definition not scaling. You just can't, one size fits it all. But the SMEs need end-to-end solutions. And that's where governmental funding, the push off of this thing has a high value around the world. And I observe in Japan, Korea, United States, Canada, European countries, a lot of exactly that understanding. Let's have the ability to have joined and as little as possible standards that are then implemented in the national ecosystems and brought forward in the global supply chains for all the different sectors.
Dean Bartels, jump into it.
Absolutely. Governmental assistance has been extremely important in the United States. And like I mentioned, we now have 17 of these different manufacturing innovation institutes. Each one is focused on the technology readiness level. That's a term we use in the United States, mainly with the Department of Defense. But you have a scale of 1 to 10. It's a pretty simple scale. 1 to 3 is this basic research area, and then 7, 8, 9, 10 is where you get into commercialization. But that missing middle, that valley of death, is where we need help. And that's what the U.S. government decided to do, is each one of these institutes are focused on maturing the technology through 4, 5, 6, 7. And then once it gets up to the level 8, the companies that own that IP take it over. We pride ourselves on this institute model that the managers of the process, in my case, my company's managing this additive manufacturing institute, we will never own any of the IP. The IP stays with the developer of the IP. All we're there for is to facilitate the management of the process of maturing that technology and getting it ready for commercialization. Could not be done without government money. Originally, when they stood up these institutes, they all said, look, 5 years. You're going to have 5 years to do this, and then we're going to shut you down. Well, they realized the value that they're getting from these institutes, that's not the case. In fact, America Makes, which is the National Additive Manufacturing Innovation Institute, we just signed our 3rd cooperative agreement. So we're beyond year 10 now. We're into year 11 and 12, and I see it continuing. The same thing with the Manufacturing Extension Partnership in the United States. There's an MEP in every single state in the United States. Some states have more than one. That was a program that was started by the U.S. government and thought to be only going to last a certain period of time, but guess what? It's been going on now for decades, and I see it continuing because they realize that the value that this government incentive money can provide far outweighs the cost, and they get so many more jobs out of these programs. So I see that continuing, and I see it being a fundamental part of advancing manufacturing technology in the future.
Dominic Romers, now also the supply chain has to become more sustainable, and you've been working also in Siemens on standardization to make more sustainable the industry, but also all the suppliers. Where are we in this, and how do you see the impact of this migration to transition to more sustainable business model in the future?
I would like to answer this question by recalling, I think, and Marco, please help me, the World Manufacturing Forum in Chernobyl in 2018. I think I was proud and humbled to be co-author of the report in those days, where already, the question, how can we combine sustainability and manufacturing was raised. And in the result, on the backside, those 10 recommendations, I think minimum 2 recommendations, Marco, were that this is an opportunity. It's not a threat. It's not extra cost for us, which produce something. It's an opportunity. It's an opening of a new market. And we see it now, if I make it specific, with batteries. In those days, we didn't think that electrical vehicle on that scale will, around the world, be available, including the infrastructure for charging. Now we have that. So battery, isn't that a great opportunity? It's highly complex. It's discrete manufacturing, it's continuous manufacturing, so chemical and the normal, it's assembly, it's testing, it's very complex product, highly integrated product, it's with electronics, it's all dimensions of technology that you can think of, and that combined with sustainability goals. So we had already in the morning the 9 R's for recycling, circular economy. How do we disassemble this thing after the lifetime? All these questions now come to reality. It's a window of opportunity. That would be my answer. The battery is just the right thing at the right moment now for manufacturing in Europe, in US, around the world, in Asia certainly, to get to the next level. And I can only underline that countries, Korea, China, I said we didn't talk about China today, but heavily leverage on that. And then all of a sudden things and regulations coming up, sorry if I repeat that again, product passports, carbon reporting, which are coming up. This will be legislation and we will be compliant with laws in countries. There's no doubt about it. All of a sudden that's a feature of that product. So we can use it and leverage on that. It's not another non-conformance cost that you have to cover with your price. So all of a sudden, that's interesting. And I'm very proud, again, sorry to my friend Marco, that was the right term of the World Manufacturing Forum, I think it was 2018, to bring it up. And now we can see that it really comes up.
You've got a good memory, by the way. And Dean Bartels, what do you make of this? So sustainability and supply chain.
Yeah, so I run in a lot of circles involving small, medium enterprises. And a lot of the small manufacturers are coming to me and asking, well, how can I help? I mean, what can I do to be more sustainable other than the standard things that everybody's doing, recycling and so forth? And there's technology that you can implement on your machines, and I'm come from a machining background, so I always focus on machining, especially in discrete parts. There's things you can add retroactively to a machine for a very modest cost that will allow you to run those machines much more efficiently, much less energy consumed when you're manufacturing, and every little bit helps. So we've got to convince the smalls that you each have a role to play in this greening of manufacturing. So I truly think we need to do more in the area of technology development to further this along, but there's actual products out there today that you can buy at a very modest cost, and the return on investment is very short, because you can save so much in energy costs by adding some capability to the CNC machines that will allow them to machine at a slower pace. Ideally, I'd love to have 3 buttons on every single CNC machine. One button says, if I've got a customer that's willing to pay the price and he wants it as fast as possible, that's one button. A second button is, if I've got a customer that wants it as cheap as possible, okay? That's a different running process, right? But the third button is, and customers out there are willing to pay for this now, if I've got a customer that wants it as green as possible, that's a different model. That's a different set of G code that runs that machine at a different pace, but we can have those 3 options and satisfy all the customers. But for the big movement, we got to get greener, no question about it.
Well, so basically you rephrased the first recommendation of the report of this year, which was be customer-centric, and so put the customer at the center of this, exactly, with the 3 buttons that you just mentioned. But let me get back to you, because there's another recommendation talking about supply chain, which is the 8th of the report of this year, which is make supply chain more localized, so get closer, which is something that we are seeing happening in the industry. You call it nearshoring, you call it friendshoring. How do you see this from this standpoint?
We were, in the past, we were thinking additive manufacturing will solve it all. Now, a couple of years later, we find out serial production, casting, etc., is still valid. So additive manufacturing plus AI would be the solution for regional and even very local in situ production, but you still will have that supply chain. If you can optimize it within your region, you optimize everything. You optimize emissions, you optimize the logistic risk. We mentioned that at the beginning of our discussion, etc. How can you do that? How can you realize that? If we leave now, what we heard by this wonderful keynotes before, if we come from this, let's say, high level now, what does that mean? I would like to underline another thing. We call it Manufacturing X. And just recently, 1 month ago in the US with the Department of Energy, we take pride to launch the International Manufacturing X Council, which is an initiative around the world. I can really say Asia, Europe, and the US, and including Canada, sorry, so North America, where we really foster that use cases that become now business cases can be realized in a data economy. I mentioned that already before, and by that I think regionality will be part of that. But you do that in a digital way now. You don't do it by finding out which supplier in your environment might be able to do it. You have your legacy, that's clear, but possibly you come with your product to a certain limit. So how to go beyond that? The data space excuse me, will be the solution for you to tackle on that. And let's, come back to Manufacturing X.
Some water in the meantime.
Yeah, so nearshoring, onshoring, reshoring, pick your buzzword, but it's a movement. There's no question about it. That's one thing that COVID really revealed, was the fact that you can't rely on some suppliers in certain parts of the world. They just simply shut up their factories, and you couldn't get parts. And you mentioned the chip shortage, which in the U.S. now you're seeing huge investments from the U.S. government to try to fix that going forward in the future. It's not fixable tomorrow, but it will be in the future. But everyone's looking at it. The Department of Defense is extremely concerned about the supply base. They call it the defense industrial base in the United States, where so many companies have exited over the last 20 years for lots of different reasons. But now, after COVID, they realize, oh my goodness, we better do something about this. So you're going to see a lot more incentives for bringing some of that production back in the U.S. And additive manufacturing is going to help in the sense that Tooling, for example, the castings industry has left the United States. Not many of them are left, but now with additive manufacturing being able to make those tools, you're going to see some of that casting work being brought back to the United States. So I do think there's going to be a big movement continuing that's already started in bringing back a lot of manufacturing that was shipped to lower wage countries because the cost of manufacturing is coming down, and in other countries wages are going up. So you're going to see more and more competitiveness in local areas.
Well, as you know, economists are concerned that this will have an inflationary impact because, producing the same things in places where costs are higher gives a structural push to inflation. How do you see the trade-off in this new vision of supply chain between safety, which is apparently the priority today, reliability and efficiency, and cost saving? How would you see this?
Well, you have to look at the total cost. So it's no longer just looking at the cost of what the part costs to produce it, but also getting it to where you want it to get to. So the calculations that I've seen from companies that are doing this for a living now, there's actually companies springing up on determining how the economic factors of bringing business back to the different locations you want to produce locally. The total cost of that item that you're going to eventually put into that assembly is really what you need to be looking at. And so therefore, even though it might cost to produce a part a little more expensive in one area, if it's much more convenient to get it to the final assembly location, you have to look at that total cost. So I do think you're going to see more and more of it becoming more and more localized going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Dominic?
I would like to underline that and make it a little bit more specific, if you allow me. Automation is the trend since, I would say, 50, 60, 70 years, and that continues. So the cost of production at a certain location is one element. It's more the resources, the supply, the minerals, the material. This is where the differentiator will more and more come in. I say that since decades, but it is as it is. And I think that the labor cost will balance out. We are globally seeing demographic changes. We have the topic of skill set of our workforce. And in my opinion, in the midterm to long term, the cost of a production at a certain place is more and more dominated by the material itself and less the way how you produce it. The trend to automation is going on, and by automation you create data, and if we make now the way, and I repeat myself, with the battery, to have sorted and structured data in a fair way where data sovereignty and data trust is controllable by you, by the SME. You can control what happens to your data. Then we will have the mind change. Mm-hmm. At the moment, 80% of the companies want your data. Only 20% of the companies are willing to give you data. We need to change that culture. And I think the only way to create this change is that everyone can benefit from that. If we can get that change and structure the data the way we think it works and have standards to exchange on that, then all of a sudden that's the tipping point. Then I think regional production is not so much forced on cheap labor.
No. I want to jump on that. That's exactly what we're focusing on for our multi-sided platform. Now we've already collected a tremendous amount of data for certain types of additive manufacturing processes, and we're reaching out to those companies that provided that data, specifically knowing it was only going to the customer at the time. But we're saying, listen, if you're willing to let that data be more open, we can bring in companies that are experts in artificial intelligence, machine learning, let them analyze that data pool that we've collected, and in return for that, whatever comes out of the process that we will fund, okay, we're going to give that to you. It's going to be a benefit for you. Since you contributed to the data lake, it'll be a benefit to you for whatever algorithms we develop that will allow you to make that process more efficient, more green, whatever it happens to be, more cost effective. That's the benefit for you opening up your data. And if we can convince more and more companies to do that, I think you're going to see a wide sweeping effect on how that's going to help manufacturing.
All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've just got less than 5 minutes left. So please, the gallery, show the number again if you want to ask any final question, because we have to wrap it up a bit. And so, Dean Bartle, you started talking additive manufacturing, and we know the importance of this habilitating technology for the future. But what do you think will be the impact also on supply chain? And you already described some projects, but what's your sense?
Yeah, additive manufacturing, I think, is going to be one of the paramount technologies for localization of manufacturing. Because even a very, very small shop now can get into additive manufacturing, and especially with the help of the multi-sided platform, I think you're going to see more and more companies getting into it. The technology continues to mature. I mean, every year, new discoveries. It's going to become more reliable. Right now, there's still a certain degree of variability from machine to machine, part to part, but that's getting better. With artificial intelligence, closed-loop adaptive control is going to be paramount for the advancement of additive manufacturing. I think you're going to see more and more of that. And eventually, the processes will be so efficient, so stable, it's going to have a big impact on localization of manufacturing.
Dominic?
And that, fully agree, that requires data, and the data must be in a data economy, and it must be such that the mass of manufacturing operations, that is companies, also academia, associations, many more, participate in that. If it's only for a few OEMs, it will not fly. And in my opinion, the data economy is the absolute base to make that happen. Otherwise, without data, it's a best guess. And I can only make an advertisement for the International Manufacturing X Council, where we organize that, where we structure that, where we define the rules, and then it will be executed nationally, and ecosystems will be developed. This will not be one global ecosystem. There will be regional, as you mentioned before, ecosystems that leverage on this data.
Sure. Now it's time for takeaway. Dean Bartels, first of all, you've got an American or US point of view, but this is the competitive dimension among companies, among continental platforms. So who do you think is leading this run, and what's the perspective? US, Europe, Asia, China, more specifically, who's ahead on this?
Yeah, I don't think it's a country that's ahead. I think it's certain companies that are ahead, and certainly the World Economic Forum, reveals, from the Lighthouse program, which companies are really on the cutting edge of doing a lot of these things. So I think it was interesting, just in the hotel that I stayed at last night, my friend and I sat down at a table with two other Americans that we happened to hear them talking. So we thought, well, let's go join them and sit down. I thought they were here for this. I was wrong. They were here because they're investing in technology produced right here in Italy. Because why? Because it's the best technology available for what they're looking for. So it doesn't matter where you go. Every country has niche solutions and advancements in certain areas versus other countries. So I wouldn't look at it from which country's ahead. I'd look at it from what companies are the ones that are really leading in the advancement of these technologies and the deployment. The D in MTDG is deployment, and that's what we're all about. We want to get these technologies deployed out there, especially to the small and mediums.
That's encouraging, especially for an Italian. Dominic Rodals.
Fully underline, and again, the angle, the SMEs need to be part of this. So the SMEs in their supply chain need to be a major part. It's not so much about countries or ecosystems. For sure, China, Europe, America, and Korea and Japan, as I mentioned before, will be in a leading position traditionally. They will be also in the leading position to set the right standards that are then globally adopted.
Dominic Rormus, Dean Bartels, thank you so much for attending WMF. Thank you so much. This was the first panel. The second panel will start just after the break, coffee break, and please come back on time because we have to keep the time right. Thanks.